privileged to be able to say some words to kick start this new edition in a series that has been given life by energetic Jacksonites who have been at the heart of organizing this. Professor Chinedu Afibomba and the PID series have very much helped our understanding of so many strategic issues in communication and performance. In this particular edition, we do get into an area of great importance because really, truly, most of the important goals that we pursue, especially through the social sectors, are difficult to accomplish as purely commercial ventures. We know that without education, without healthcare, performance will be challenged. I am often quick to turn to the writings of the Princeton University economist Angus Deaton, especially from his book that looks at health, wealth, and the origins of inequality, The Great Escape. It is evident that the societies that have made a lot of progress have depended on the investments in healthcare and in education. But as a purely commercial venture, it would be limiting to depend on just those who can pay to open the possibilities from education and healthcare. So we need to find ways of funding education other than reliance on just what people can afford to pay. We live in a country where we're now in a prolonged crisis for higher education. ASU is on strike again in Nigeria. This has become a pattern. So we are in a position where 45 years, 50 years ago, we have been told that Eric Ashby, who chaired the Commission on Higher Education in Nigeria, set up by Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, that the quality of higher education in Nigeria was as good as the very best in the world. But we now see a significant decline, driven majorly by the fact that from a strategic point of view, when government opened up higher education in the late 70s, early 80s, it could not fund accordingly. And so we need to build models for funding universities. How can we fundraise in a way that will open access, yet ensure that we raise enough revenues to make universities of high quality? This is what Chinedu and co are bringing to us in this PID series today. We're grateful to them for the effort, and we look forward to learning plenty from the people of praxis who are present and people who have lived as researchers in this area. I cannot wait to learn more because it is so fundamental and critical to what has been referred to as a tripartite approach to development, where the public sector, the private sector, and the private development agencies collaborate to drive development. So again, my thanks to the PID series. So over to you, back moderator, and we look forward to abundance in learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Professor Tommy. Always a pleasure to have you around. Thank you so very much. As a way of further introduction, the JPDS seminar is actually the Jacksonites Professional Development Series, and it is an initiative designed by the mass communication, the alumni, to bring about inclusive and progressive discourse with a view to creating an informed and empowered alumni body. So we'll be running now as we'll introduce to you as speakers that will be leading us. In a short while, I'll be bringing on Professor Charles Okibo, who will be speaking on fundraising and capital campaigns as strategic communication. In the world of the academic and marketing communications, he is a man who has distinguished himself. He has been a lecturer in many top-rated universities like the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, UNILAG, Ahmadu Bello University. Currently, he is the Professor Emeritus of Strategic Communication and Analytics at the North Dakota State University in USA. He was one time the APCON registrar, and he is an expert at teaching fundraising campaigns. I'll be bringing him aboard in a short while. And after that, we will have the privilege of also listening to a professor who will be speaking on restructuring the emerging landscape for resource mobilization in Nigerian higher education. Professor Bartholomew Okolo is an innovator, a visionary, and a change agent. He is an accomplished scholar and an expert in fundraising. He has numerous projects successfully funded to his credit. He was one time Vice Chancellor of the prestigious University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Professor Okolo is a highly rated. Today, like I said, we'll be speaking on restructuring the emerging landscape for resource mobilization in Nigeria higher education. After that, we'll bring on John Clark, who is the Director of Advancement Studies at St. John Paul II Catholic Schools in Fargo, North Dakota. He has over 30 years of experience in fundraising, especially in areas like healthcare, social services, and higher education. Today, he'll be presenting a paper titled Fundraising is Not Asked in a Short While. After that, we have the privilege of also listening to Professor Ladi Adamu, a professor of broadcasting from the Ahmadu Bello University, for case studies in fundraising and capital campaigns in Nigeria. Later, Professor Yakubu Chefu, the current Secretary General, the Committee of Vice Chancellors, withdrew of the, but for now, let's set the ball rolling as I welcome Professor Charles Okibo to deliver his paper. Professor Charles Okibo, over to you. You're there.
Okay, thank you very much, Tosin.
It's a pleasure, Professor.
It's my great pleasure to be with all of you today. A long time ago, I used to teach advertising and public relations at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, where many of you were introduced to communication studies. But before we begin, I would like to take half a minute to remind us of 3 of your teachers who were my colleagues who have passed on. So half a minute silence for Tien Obodo, Titus Obodo, who was my roommate in the department, and Sam Idemili, who was one of your best teachers in magazine writing and went on to be head of department for a while. And then PC Abba, the great PC Abba, who passed on 2 years ago. So just have a minute. May the souls of these adorable teachers and the souls of all the faithful departed rest in peace. Yeah. Lions and lionesses.
Yeah.
Lions and lionesses. Many of you here today are lions and lionesses, even though some who are not would like to be associated with that great university, UNN. UNN is unique in many respects because it was the first indigenous university in Nigeria. And even today, it remains unique in many areas. The Jackson School is unique too, in many respects, because it was the first degree granting communication program in all of tropical Africa. Before Jackson School, there was none, because following the British tradition, we didn't think journalism should be studied in a university. But when Nnamdi Azikiwe came back and wanted to establish an American-style university, he felt that journalism had to be one of the leading departments. And so you are unique in that respect. Both UNN and Jackson School are unique in our respect for continuing education, which is why we are here today. We are here today because of our commitment to continuing education. In fact, I met many of you at Nsukka because you believed in continuing your education. And the department, rightly called the school, before anybody thought about schools of communication in any part of Africa, we already had it at UNN. And the department was committed to continuing education. It's not accidental that the pioneer students were already accomplished professionals. People like Sylvanus Ekwelia, Idemili, Edani was actually a constable in the police force before he came to do journalism at Nsukka. So we have a long history of being dedicated to continuing education. And that's why we are here today. We are here today to continue in that our belief that we can't actualize who God meant us to be without continuing education. And I'm happy to be here to share some ideas with you. But I'm even happier because by early this morning, there were 452 of you who were registered to take part in this training exercise. So I'm happy to be here to share ideas, but I'm happier because I have the privilege of learning from you. The last time we met, I stood in front of the class and was explaining things to you. Since then, many of you have risen to be heads of departments, to be directors of communication, and you are spread out everywhere, from Abuja to Dubai, where Emeka Opara is now holding forth. So you are everywhere. And in being everywhere, you are learning, you are continually learning. And so I'm happy for the opportunity to learn from you, starting today, but continuing, going on into the future. This is going to be a continual learning exercise for you, the participants, but also for us, the resource persons. I think for many of us, we now believe what Madeleine Albright said not too long ago. You know, she was a professor before she became Secretary of State. and now she's over 80. And she says now in her old age, she realizes that her best teachers today were actually her students. I think I can claim that too, that today, my best teachers are you, who not long ago were my students. So my presentation today is very simple. Let's get to the slide. The title is Effective Fundraising and Capital Campaigns as Strategic Communication. Effective fundraising and capital campaigns as strategic communication. I want to show you that there are 3 key terms that we should be focusing on. Next slide, please. 3 key terms we should be focusing on when we talk about effective fundraising and capital campaigns as strategic communication. The first key term is fundraising. The second term is capital campaigns. The third is strategic communications. These 3 terms rolled together will be the foundation for our discussion today. First, fundraising. By fundraising, which here in the US we often call friend raising, because as John Clockey will explain to you very soon, fundraising is not necessarily asking for money. It doesn't begin with funds. It begins with interpersonal relationships. It begins by making friends, because nobody will give you that money unless they believe you are their friend. But fundraising generally means the designs we all have to attract support. I first tried this at the University of Ife in 1974 as an undergraduate student in English, and I needed to buy a mobilette, small motorcycle. I didn't have enough money, but I had to come up with a design to attract enough money to buy me that mobilette. That was fundraising. The Catholic Church is very good with various designs for parishioners to give money. In fact, when we were in primary school, we didn't even know what AMC stood for. But it was a design by the Catholic Church to collect money, start collecting money from us as children, so that we would get into the habit of always giving when the church needed money. We call it AMC. The full name is Annual Missionary Collection. Irish priests in Onitsha Archdiocese required every one of us in primary school to make sure we gave something every year. And we had a card where how much we gave was marked. And in adult life, you couldn't even be wedded in the Catholic Church if you couldn't produce your AMC card. So that's fundraising at a different level. But how about capital campaigns? Capital campaigns are a branch of fundraising designs. But unlike fundraising, which could be to raise 10 naira or 1,000 naira or 1 million naira, when we go to capital campaigns, now we are talking big money. As Ladi Adamu will tell you from her case studies, usually these days is in billions, B as in boy, billions, not millions. And we are hoping more universities will engage in this, because as Pat Otome just told us, university education, or in fact, education at higher levels cannot be sustained by individual efforts or by governments alone, not even with scholarships from foundations. We must engage all the various constituents of higher education to contribute. And the best way to engage them is through capital campaigns, those strategic designs for us to raise huge amount of money. Here in the US, there are more than 215 universities that are engaged in more than $5 billion capital campaigns. And all of them are successful. As John Clocky will tell you about how successful campaigns are managed in the US. The third concept is strategic communication. When we were at Nsukka, we taught you advertising, public relations, journalism, corporate communication. Later on, we rolled all this together and we called it integrated marketing communication, because effective communication requires you to know how to talk to the press, how to use advertising, how to produce PR materials, how to use corporate social responsibility. Pat Otomi knows this very well because as the chief executive officer at Volkswagen Nigeria, he knew that he didn't have to depend on only the journalists who were his friends. He knew he had to work with an advertising agency and indeed work with PR consultants. So from integrated marketing communications, today we are talking about strategic communication. Let's move on to the next slide. Because strategic communication is what brings all those other disciplines together. Strategic means we have to plan. There must be a plan. And that's one word you will hear a lot about today from all the speakers. That fundraising requires planning, careful planning. It's not accidental. It's not haphazard. It's not hit and miss. So let's talk about effective fundraising. We engage in it all the time. I gave you the example of when I bought my first motorbike at the University of Ife. I engage in fundraising. So it's something we do all the time. In fact, we even have traditional native versions of it. Those of you who are Igbos know about the susu, where a group of friends will come together and put money together and then give it to one person every month. That's fundraising. But it is not fundraising unless it is strategic. Fundraising is not something we engage in by accident. Now let's do fundraising. Let's call women together and ask them to give us money. No, it's not fundraising if you don't have a strategic plan. And very soon I will give you the elements that make up this strategic plan. And to be strategic, it means you have to think it out ahead of time. You have to know, who are we raising this money for? What is the goal? How much are we looking for? Who will be the major donor that if we don't have him or her, we shouldn't even begin? John Clocky will talk to you about some rules in fundraising, that there is a silent phase when we are just taking pledges. We won't even announce that we are doing a fundraising campaign. And then there is an open phase. So strategic means we have a plan, a clear plan of what to do, when, with whom, and what to achieve. And then how to measure as we go along, so that if we are not achieving our goals, we can disassemble to begin again. And then finally, fundraising often goes with capital campaigns. So let's talk about capital campaigns. What are capital campaigns? Capital campaigns are fundraising designs, but they are unique in the sense that we are looking for a huge amount of money. It's not 2 million. It's not even 50 million these days. In Nigeria, it has to be in billions, because that's how much money you need to make an impact. So capital campaigns are those special fundraising designs where we are targeting to raise a huge amount of money. And usually it's not just for anything. It's for specific projects, like the Jackson School building at UNN. It's a specific project, and it is for a specific time period. It's not open-ended. In Nigeria, we tend to do fundraising whenever we like. We wake up and we start doing fundraising, and then we never end. It should be time limited. Here in the US, our capital campaigns run between 3 to 6 years. In 3 years of silent phase, we announce. As soon as we announce, it means we are getting close to the end. So what happens if your success rate is not what you expected? You thought that by now you should have raised 50%, but you haven't. You don't continue indefinitely. You hurry up and end, even if you didn't meet your target, and then you can plan to launch a new one. So the key feature, the common feature in capital campaigns and fundraising in Nigeria is that we lack strategy. We don't have a strategic plan that will guide us in raising 200 million naira or in raising 2 billion naira. Ladi Adamu will give you some case studies of failed fundraising campaigns. And there are many reasons why they failed. But two primary reasons are lack of strategy. We didn't begin with a plan. The second reason is lack of professionalism. You can see how well-dressed Tosin is. It's because he has a good tailor. A simple thing as making a vest or making a shirt, which almost anybody can do, but we have professionals who do that. And if you want a good shirt or a good vest, you better have a good tailor. But with fundraising, we think almost anybody can engage in capital campaigns. Not so. We have some case studies of former governors or even sitting governors like the one in Yobe, launching capital campaigns without any plan, launching capital campaigns without involving professionals, even if they're just PR consultants, or even if they are just people who are teaching communication. You have to have consultants. They may not know how much to do the first time, but they'll be learning with you. So one of the lessons for today's webinar is the need to engage professionals. Let's move on. I want to talk about the missing. What is missing in Nigeria's capital campaigns? I could name 20 things that we are doing wrong in Nigeria's capital campaigns. There are many things we are doing wrong in Nigeria's capital campaigns. The first of them is that we don't start with a vision. We don't start with a vision. We need to start with a vision, with a mission, and what I call persona. What is the personality of your organization? How is the UNN perceived in the public? Secondly, we often don't have a feasibility research. There must be a feasibility research that shows us at what level we can succeed. Should we target 2 million? Maybe 4 million, maybe 6 million. The rule is not to under-target. If you under-target, you will underachieve, which means there is money out there you should have gotten, but you don't. Or over-target. It means you are setting yourself up to fail. So feasibility research is important. Strategic plan is inevitable. You have to have a plan of who is doing what, when, with whom, how, and what is the end result. Prospect research, it's a class I teach here. It takes 16 weeks, but the substance of the class is how do we identify the best prospects who will give us at the level we want to achieve our target. Team building is critical. Team building is very important. We can't do it all alone by ourselves. And so is a communication plan. We always have to have a plan. We need to have a plan that will guide us. Training is critical because we don't know it all. You know, we talked about continuing education. Even among capital campaign managers, there is need for them to continue to learn. So training is important. Training of volunteers, training of staff, training of people who will help us. And then next will be a timeline. If you don't have a timeline, you wouldn't know when to stop. and you will know when you have gone halfway. So a timeline is critical. And then finally, it's important for us to make sure we execute clearly. One more thing, evaluation. You need to evaluate at the end of it. So let me go on and conclude by naming 4 serious mistakes we make. 4 serious mistakes we make with fundraising and capital campaigns in Nigeria. I already hinted to you that there is a silent phase in a capital campaign. That's the stage where we don't even announce we have a capital campaign. It's a silent phase. It could run for 2 years. During this period, we're taking pledges from different people, from the major donors in particular, so that when we now announce, on the day we announce, we say, by the way, we already have 60% or even 70% of the target achieved. And that makes almost anybody who hears about the campaign to join us, because this is a winning horse. They want to join us and be part of the winning team. But in Nigeria, we don't have this division between the silent phase and the public phase. Secondly, and John will talk more about this, we have a disregard for the historical rules and principles. There is some math, there is mathematics involved in capital campaigns. The primary statistics is the Pareto principle, that 20% of our donors will give us 80% of the total money we are collecting. If you don't identify this 20%, you are already bound to fail. We don't do that in Nigeria. We have to. When Peter Obi launched the UNN capital campaign the other day, he was thinking of getting 1,000 alumni to give 100,000 naira each. That's the beginning of failure. You can't expect so many alumni to give at the same level because they're not all the same. Iwanyanwu cannot give at the same level as Chidonwakamma, even though they are all both alumni of the university. So we have to have proper regard for the statistics involved. There is what we call the gift range chart. It's a triangle that shows you who should be given at what level and how many of them do we need. Thirdly, we don't think ahead about stewardship. By stewardship, we mean, how will you tell the donors their money has done what it was intended to do? Before you approach Dangote, you ought to have an idea of how to tell him how his money has advanced his personal beliefs. We don't do that. And then finally, we recycle traditional money bags. If there is a capital campaign launch, you can be sure the big people, Dangote, BUA, P2B, all those rich people will be there. Many of them have been overexposed. In conclusion, I want to conclude by telling you 2 things. One is that there is no bad time for you to start a fundraising or capital campaign. There is no bad time, as long as you have a good plan. And then in Nigeria today, there are too many failed campaigns. The ABU campaign for 2 billion failed. The UI campaign for 2.5 billion failed. Many other universities had attempted and none has successfully completed a major capital campaign. Many more will fail in future unless we as Jacksonites jump in there and begin to use our knowledge of communication to help all these people who need to know how to do this. So this is a good time for us. And thanks to people like Chinedumba and Ugonoha, but particularly Patu Tommy, he is there, who is always there in the arena, directing our attention to the various problems that are plaguing Nigeria. Thanks to their commitment, there is no doubt that the future of fundraising and capital campaigns will be bright. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to share some of these snippets. The last time we taught fundraising and capital campaigns at Nsukka, it was mostly tradition. We were talking about how do we use the media. But today, it has to do with IT, information technology, which is why I said this is a continual learning process where I am sharing some of my ideas, but I'm ready to listen to you because we all know something, very often something unique about fundraising and capital campaigns. And when we pull all this together, the outcome is going to be fantastic. Once again, thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to vigorous discussions with all of you, both now and going forward in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, Professor Charles Okibo.
Thank you, Prof.
That was a beautiful presentation. That was quite loaded. Fundraising.
Thank you, my erudite professor.
Elsie, you're muted. Unmute.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Professor Charles Okibo. That was a loaded one. We appreciate you. Some key notes in your presentation. You said fundraising must be deliberate. Fundraising is strategic. Fundraising is about careful planning. Fundraising does not start with fun. It's about building relationships, and we cannot overemphasize that. And you also said we should not under-target or over-target. Thank you, Professor Charles Okibo. That was well taken. Professor Charles Okibo is the Emeritus Professor of Strategic Communications at the North Dakota State University. He will also be joining us as we go on. Other presenters coming on, please let everyone get their mics muted. Please, it's in our best interest. All right, we'll be moving on now to Professor Bartholomew Okolo, who will be presenting a paper titled Restructuring the Emerging Landscape for Resource Mobilization. Professor Bartholomew Okolo was one time the Vice Chancellor of the prestigious university. Professor Bartholomew Okolo, are you ready?
Yeah, Prof, you're muted. Unmute yourself. Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right,
Okay.
you might need to unmute, Professor. Loud and clear, Professor. It's over to you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Slide number 1, please.
Okay, coming up, slide number 1.
Thank you very much, the Jacksonites, for organizing this meeting. It's a wonderful initiative, and I feel happy to be associated with it. And I also thank Professor Charles Okibo, who invited me to be part of this initiative. Next slide, please. In the past 2 decades, at least 2 decades, I've been chairman of Enugu Sports Club. I've held several positions in the university system. I didn't have any special training in fundraising, specific training in fundraising. But these situations over the past 20 years, where the major responsibility was to raise resources to do the job, I've practically learned so much and had so much practical experience. A lot of words, a couple of words, fundraising, resource mobilization, and capital campaign, you will meet as we progress. So I therefore want to define them a little. I'm happy that Charles Okibo has touched on it and given appropriate definition, which shows that the volume of resources raised determines the nomenclature, whether it is fundraising or it is capital campaign. But resource mobilization goes beyond just capital campaign or fundraising, because it's a process where funds are raised as cash, as money, as funds. And it's a process where also capital campaign is also a process where huge monies are raised to invest in huge capital. But resource mobilization means that it's a situation where you can raise more funds, and at the same time raise other resources that you require to drive a mission or a mandate. So it's not just about money, it's about resource. Is it academic staff that you want? Is it an expert in one thing or the other that you want, and you don't have the money to buy them, and there's somebody who can give you that resource? That is resource that you have mobilized. Although it translates to funds eventually, but there's a small difference. But in this situation, we are going to use the words interchangeably. I also want to define core funding, because it will come into play as we go along. Core funding is the major funds the universities get. You can call it traditional funds that they are used to draw the mandates. It comprises subventions from visitors or subventions from proprietors or whoever owns the university, plus fees. Every university gets that resource. And until recently, until about the 20s, it was virtually enough for most university managers to sit back and use that core funding and run the universities. To go along, I will explain to you the differences that have arisen over the years because of the global economic depression. Next slide, please. Now, let me give you a background to resource mobilization, the need for resource mobilization in universities. Higher institutions, like I said earlier, like governments and private universities, rely on governments for their resources to thrive. Sometime around 2008, there was a global economic recession. That was when most universities across the world began to see the need for specific strategic planning to raise resources beyond the core funding. So any university, as we go ahead from now going forward, that does not embrace fundraising is not likely to survive. The additional funds will be necessary to make up for the depression and poor funding of institutions due to the economic depression. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the donations can come in various ways, as endowment, as sponsorship, as various resources that are not money, gifts. So Charles Okibo mentioned about strategic planning in fundraising. Before recently, fundraising is seen as a formal voluntary philanthropy. But these days, it is no longer a voluntary philanthropy. It is a strategic planned effort to raise resources, enough resources to even run the university, not just to mitigate the gap, to bridge the gap between the traditional core funding and the actual resources required to run the university. So in doing it, a lot of investment is required because you need to do the strategic planning, you need to do research. And the operators of the campaign need some incentivizing. They need to be some benefits to be able to run around and do the job, not just gain profit to take home, but resources to utilize to make the effort to go and create the passion to go and find the prospective. Next slide, please. So why do universities require to embark on fundraising? I have said that it is necessary to make up for the shortfall in core funding. That is the general benefits. But there are more important benefits. There are more as important benefits because it focuses the university to articulate its strategic plan. The research that the fundraising team will do will help to bring up ideas and materials to design the strategic plan of the university. It will bring influential people because they are going to look for passionate, potential and prospective donors who eventually becomes great friends of the university and also contribute in raising the profile of the university, and the university can also leverage on their connections and network. So the successful fundraising will now leverage the university from financial entanglements and to the able now to be able to carry out their mandate and meet with their vision. Successful mandate obviously will raise the morale of the principal officers of the institution and their profile because they're able now to do a whole lot of things, particularly upgrading the teaching environments, creating situations that will help for students to be able to have a good learning experience and infrastructure also. Next slide, please. So the first step, the first major step in making a successful fundraising is to create a team building. Charles mentioned about how donors see fundraisers. Sometimes the donors may feel that their monies are not safe in this people or that person. So the first thing to do is to create a team and create a team leader who must have excellent reputation, who must have a high network and be energetic and have high integrity. So approaching a potential fundraiser, a potential fundraiser will now become confident that if his resources are placed into this group, that it are not going to, it's not going to be misapplied or misappropriated or whatever. And the team must also be outgoing, must be positive and socially adept and skilled. I said earlier that the team, because they have a huge responsibility, they have to identify the major donors, the partnership opportunities and advocates who will share the institution's values and objectives, and need a good reward. Reward, not just cash, what could be in position, but they need resources to drive the fundraising. The research, because this fundraising has now become, and resource mobilization has now become a science, so to say, and a strategic step must be developed for the process. The research, a huge research, must be done. It must take several years. It's not a very impromptu thing. It takes several years to do the research. Research on the potential and prospective donors. Research their passion, their level of resources, their exposure, their integrity, and a whole lot of things. So you research the potential donors, you research the institution itself. That is how it helps establishing the strategic plans of the institution. But you need all those information to see whichever projects you want to do. So the next step after the research is to articulate the institutional needs and create a diary of the needs and priorities of the institutional needs. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And then this needs to be justified because the donors need to know the impact of those needs, those specific projects or initiatives or campaigns that you're selling to them. They want to know, how does it impact the humanity? How does it impact this? How does it impact the university? How does it impact themselves? So a development of the needs and justification of those needs are very, very important. Also, because there are various hierarchy of donors, there are donors who can sponsor huge projects, there are donors who can contribute, say, 1,500,000 and smaller. There is need now to classify and group the needs into volumes, various amounts of funds, of money. Those that will cost, say, 200 million, the ones that will cost under 100 million, the ones that will cost 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion. Graduate them like that so that people can engage where to commit. And then the projects has to be costed properly and also designed, if they have construction projects designed and costed. Next slide, please. And after that, the team will now begin to solicit major donors within the community and the country, so to say. Depending on, it's usually advisable, just like Prof said earlier, that 20% of the donors can bring 80% of the resources you require. To go for the big ones and go for the small ones, and then begin to create relationships with them. So first of all, they create a diary of donors, form strong corporate partnerships, and create reward mechanisms. These donors will require rewards as incentives to commit the resources. Either you find out what their passion is, or what whether they would like to name the projects, they would like to have the projects named after them, or they would like to have their names in a Hall of Fame or publicly announced. So you need to find out what are the reward mechanisms available or designed and what will appeal to each donor. So create donor recognition programs and create donor relationships. This is very, very important during or before, even before the projects start, and during and even when donations are being given. Next slide, please. It's also necessary to create a marketing and advertising opportunity. You can explore branding. This is your field, the Jacksonites. You know how these things are done. And a lot of you helped us when we did the NUGA in 2009 in the advertising process. Explore branding and rebranding, run advertisements, you write up good cases for support, and then make requests clear and explicit so that there are no ambiguities in considering the request. Produce memorabilia which can raise resources when they are sold and provide endorsements. Next slide, please. Next slide. Relationship building is a major. Go back one step, please. 6A. 6A, please. Relationship building is a major aspect of design of a strategic resource mobilization process. The relationship process is what will make the donor feel comfortable to relate with the institution and to commit to the project. So it is very good to research the needs and the perception of the donor, of the potential or prospective donor. And then the university is a huge supplier of resources. University, they have various experts. If you have a prospective donor that is dealing on one, a private sector person that is building, that probably producing chemicals, you will have a whole lot of needs in the manufacturing process. And you have the experts in the chemistry or physical science faculty. Then you get the experts to research the project of the company and see where the university can give. It's not just sitting back to receive. You have to research the need of the donor and be able to commit also as the donor is giving. That will give incentive to the donor to be able to commit and give huge resources because he knows that it will be useful to him. It's not just donating and donating. That is the difference with the normal philanthropy and the strategic resource mobilization. Effective relationships and reward best practices will include the following: efficient processing and management of donors. No donor will like to give his money, his resources, and see that it is not applied to where he wants. This is very, very important. It is not so very sensitively managed. All of the other donors will run. So they must be efficiently and clearly, transparently managed. And we have to develop effective appreciation models for the donors. So What would they want? Would they want for you to get experts to come and help them? Would they want for you to put their name in the Hall of Fame? Would they want for you to name the projects after them, etc.? Next slide, please. Public recognition of the donors and the contribution to the university. To high profile, the university usually have high profile activities. Donors will feel if they are.
Prof, you're muted. Prof, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So the donors need to be informed and kept abreast of updated about the donation, especially when it involves endowments or building of specific projects. They need to have some photographs as the construction progresses. They need to have videos. They need to be visited, invited to see the progress of the project. And they also would like to have stories of impact. What do the people those projects are being specifically built for? How do they feel? That will also encourage the donors. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, I've written down a couple of successful projects that we had donors to committees, both the federal government, and individuals and state governments. There's so many of them. You can look at the slide 7A and 7B and see many of them. What this shows is that the Nigerian environment, the Nigerian people like to donate. They like to commit to things that will impact on humanity. The problem is that they also will want to see their resources not misappropriated or not misapplied or wasted completely. This slide number 1 and 2 will show you these are the projects that we have done over the years from NUGA to my vice chancellor period. And if in a country you can get this volume of resources donated, this is just a few of them. If you can get this volume of resources donated, then the community, the country is very much donation friendly. And I think Nigeria is donation friendly. All we need to do is to develop the strategy, proper strategy and relationships to be able to encourage the people who have resources and who want to donate, but are afraid that their monies will be applied. Next slide, please.
I'm going back to buy tomato.
Next slide. So challenges and setbacks.
What's follow me? I'm coming back. No, yet.
One of the major setbacks to this process is the death of competent staff, competent people with the adequate skill sets to manage the resource mobilization process. And another one is the need for the appreciation of the need for strategic mobilization of resources. Most people do not know or cannot even imagine that it is necessary. Some people feel it's not possible But many people don't know that it is necessary. So that's one of the major setbacks. So we need to improvise a mechanism, a machinery, both the public and the academic community on the need to engage in such processes. Rising poverty due to global economic recession. This particular item has caused the proprietors and visitors not to be able to used to live, and that has caused a lot of students to drop out from school and reduce the enrollment of a lot of schools. So that's a big problem, and it's also giving pressure on the institutions now to begin to realize that they need additional money. They need money investments to bridge the gap between the core funding resources they have and the total money they require to drive their mandates. Access to core funding resources is unpredictable because of the global economic recession. Donor fatigue. As many institutions now begin to drive for donations, they are driving it from virtually the same group of people. Today you ask for this, the next day you ask for the same thing, for another thing. The donor obviously will get fatigued. That is one of the major challenges and setbacks to this process. Increased competition, because many institutions are now realizing the need for strategic fund management, and so that's competition, because it's virtually the same group, the same private sector, the same individuals that are responsible for bringing these resources. So there's competition for donor funds. That's a challenge. And donor expectations are also increasing and revolving due to the competition, and due to so many institutions now realizing the need for imposing strategic fundraising. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so very much, Professor Okolo, for sharing with us from your wealth of experience. Thank you so very much. Professor Bartholomew Okolo was former Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria and State. In your presentation, there are certain highlights I would like to share with everyone, especially those that are just coming in. You have said that fundraising should not be a hazard, it must be deliberate and strategic, that Nigeria is donation friendly, that we must never neglect the process of relationship building. And you also emphasize the need for a clear understanding of the Pareto principle, that 80% of the likely donations we're going to receive will come from 20% of our donors. You also spoke about the need to research the passion objectives with our plan. And you said the element of trust is also essential in a successful fundraising. These are key points that I'm sure will think home with the participants here. Thank you so very much, Professor Bartholomew Okolo, for your time. Really appreciate you. That was quite deep. All right, so move ahead now in this series of presentations. I'll be going over to Mr. John Clark, who will be taking us on asking for money. Mr. John Clark is the Director of Advancement for St. John Paul's Catholic School in Fargo, North Dakota, USA. He has over 30 years experience as a fundraiser, especially in areas like healthcare, social services, and higher education. Today, he will give us insight into things we need to do and things we must clearly avoid. He also will be emphasizing on the Mr. John Clark, are you ready for us?
I believe so. Are you able to see my presentation?
Thank you so very much. Yes, thank you so very much. Yes, thank you. Over to you now.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. It's a privilege and an honor to be here today for you. And just the title of my presentation, I think you might enjoy. Fundraising is not asking for money. You know, I think if you're like me and most human beings, we don't jump out of bed in the morning saying, I wonder who I can ask for money from. It's not our natural inclination to do that. But what I'm hoping today is to show you a way that you really can take some of the anxiety out of the process of asking for money, and also positioning your organization in such a way that it is able to do even more fundraising. One statistic that we see in fundraising today for nonprofit organizations is that our donors are becoming a little bit more particular, and as their funds are sometimes less, they are apt to not give it to as many charities, even though they are still generous. So it is up to us as fundraisers to do things in a way that keep us on the list for those folks that are charitable. So as an introduction, I have been in fundraising for over 30 years. As Tosin mentioned, thank you, Tosin, for that introduction. I have been involved in healthcare, in social services, in higher education, and currently I am the Director of Advancement for St. John Paul II Catholic Schools in Fargo, North Dakota. And we are 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. And I've been working there now just about 3 years working on their programs. Previously, I was at Mayville State University for 7 years. And as Charles mentioned about the length of time it takes to do some good in a capital campaign, in 6 or 7 years, we were able to do a lot of wonderful things at Mayville State University. And so have that higher education experience. So I'm going to start with just the idea of homework for you to do after today. And that is in the area as you prepare as fundraisers to start by measuring of your past results. In order to go forward, you need to know where you've been and where you are currently. And as there's an old slogan that says, whatever gets measured gets managed. So I want to start there. So I'd like you to make a note of the things that you might be able to manage and measure based upon whether or not you have the appropriate softwares or platforms. I want you to look at the past 3 years and measure these things. What was the total number of donors you had each year for the last 3 years? This is very important. If you're going to be looking forward at what you would like to do, you really need to know what your performance has been so that you can sort of adjust the time frame that you think it might take to raise money by knowing what you've typically had, even though we will stretch to increase the number of donors. And then what was the total number of gifts each year for the last 3 years? How many gifts did you actually receive? And next was, what was the most popular fund or purpose that folks gave to? This is very important because if you have a high percentage of folks giving to one particular fund, and let's just say that that fund is not similar to the one that you're going to raise funds for, it's important for you to know, first of all, that you have a lot of folks interested in a certain kind of fundraising, and it'll tell you how much education you may need to do to link their fundraising to a new fund. Finally, what was the average gift size for the giving? This will tell you a lot about the current potential. And I say current because we can always aim higher in the future, but it lets you know what the current giving sizes are. The average gift size will tell you a couple of things. First of all, it helps you to learn where the breaks in gift size are. You may see a number of people giving at a certain average gift size, and then you may find another person, another level of giving. So you can break that giving using the average gift size into small gifts, medium gifts, and large gifts. This is very important when you're working on a capital campaign, because as has been mentioned, when you are in the silent phase, you are looking for the leadership gifts. And when you eventually get to the public phase, you will be looking to the folks that can give small, medium, and large gifts. So you look at how many of each gifts in each size have been given. And here's where the art and the science come together for us as individual fundraisers, because we're all different in our thinking and in our style and in our approach. You need to use some of your own intuition to look at your donors and see where their average gift sizes are. And it gives you a sense of, where am I at and what are my possibilities? You need to look at that, not as a limitation, but as a realistic base to begin with. And has been mentioned in several of the presentations, it's very common to use the 80-20 ratio. As has been mentioned, typically the Pareto principle of 80-20 means that in the fundraising world, approximately 20% of your donors will give you 80% of the gifts for your campaign. So you need to know what your organization's ratio is. Is it 80-20? I've worked for organizations that have been 80-20, and nationally and worldwide, we're seeing a change in that. In many cases, it may be 10% of your donors giving you 90% of your funds, or 5% of your donors giving you 95% of your funds. You need to look at your average gift sizes and the information that you're researching and look at, if I were to put my 80-20 ratio as, how many donors did it take to make up 80% of my money that was raised? That's going to start to tell you what your ratio is. What number of donors gave you 80% of last year's revenues? So you take the total number of donors, you take 80% of the last year's revenues and how many donors it took to get that, and figure out what that number of donors is as a percentage of the total number of donors. What number of donors gave you 90% of last year's revenue? What number of donors gave you 95% of last year's revenue? It's an interesting process, and before you start the personal relationship building part of the process, it's good to dive into the data a little bit and really kind of see where you're at. Then you look at the areas of growth that you might have from your research. Begin your efforts with the top end of each gift group. So if 20% of your donors are giving you 80% of your gift revenue, it really shows you how you can focus and allocate the majority of your time to working with the top of each donor category. This is a very efficient way of starting your campaign, especially when you're in the silent phase. You are looking for the top leaders in giving, those that you can sit down with and talk to about your campaign. And what I do is I follow, there is a book by Penelope Burke, and it is called Donor-Centered Fundraising. And I would highly recommend that book for folks that may be interested to learn more about the donor-centered nature of fundraising. And as was mentioned in the previous presentation, we really need to know what our donors care about and what they're interested in. But we also need to be communicating with them a great deal before we ask them for funds. If you're like I am in my past years, you tend to just go and ask, and then you ask again, and then you ask again. But I've learned over the years that in between those asks, donors are expecting some personal relationship building communications that are not about asking them for money, but really are about thanking them and showing them the impact of their gift. So here are some of the ways that you might be able to communicate during the year. A well-written thank you note or receipt. And I'm thinking about a personal note. Think about the idea of if you were writing a thank you note to your family member for a gift, how would you make that family member smile when they read your note? You know, just by your own natural language and your own heartfelt thanks. That's the same way that donors want to be communicated with as well. So you might give them one or more personal handwritten notes during the year, just staying in touch and thanking them every time. Thanking, thanking, thanking. You might also send them an annual impact report. I do this every year for our annual fund. I really try to educate our donors on what the actual impact of their gift was, because for us, an annual gift to the annual fund impacts so many parts of our organization. And I think when donors realize how much good their gift did for our organization, they're predisposed to want to help us again the next time that we ask. And when I talk about fundraising is not asking for money, if you do a really good job of communicating in between gifts, what I have found, and I'm sure others of you have found this, that yes, we do need to ask for money, but often because we are communicating in this way and not asking, a lot of times our donors will say, well, that's great news. How can I help you this year? That's a wonderful question. And it's wonderful when they ask us and then we are ready for them to let them know how they can help. We also can send out periodic newsletters talking about the success of the organization. People want to know they're giving to a successful organization. There are organizations that use sort of a sinking ship mentality, like give us the gifts, we're sinking fast. You may get some gifts in the short term, but oftentimes people really want to give to a successful cause. And then there's a personal visit when it's possible to visit someone personally. There's nothing more important than a personal visit. Now that could be a phone call, that could be in person, that could be at a special event that you might have. In fact, you might have a once a year stewardship event for your top donors. Professor Okolo talked about motivating and incentivizing your donors. There's nothing more incentivizing than having a group of like-minded donors gathered together in a room and share your thanks with them and let them meet each other. There is a magic in donors meeting donors. They feel like they are part of a group. As we all know, Maslow's hierarchy of need, there's no important need than to feel the feeling of belonging to a group. And that's some of the non-ask communications, but also when you're looking at preparing for a capital campaign, you might also use matching gifts as a strategy. And why matching gifts? People love to know that if they give a gift to a cause they care about, that there might be a matching gift that will make their gift of even greater impact. There are corporations that we might have donors who work for a corporation who will tell us if you give as an employee to a nonprofit, we will match that gift to some degree. Maybe it'll be a one-on-one match. That's a very powerful tool. And it's always important in all of your publications to ask people to look at their organization and determine if that organization provides matching gifts. There can be a state or government match. We're all from different parts of the world, and In the United States and even in my own state of North Dakota, there are some very wonderful credits from the government that will allow people who give charitably to receive tax credits for their gifts, not just the deduction, but even some credits. There can also be, and this is maybe what all of us can do, and that is the donor match, creating a matching challenge with a donor. This is a really powerful tool, and donors appreciate the idea that you would ask them, would you consider giving X amount of dollars if we can get enough people to match that amount of giving? If we don't, you will not give us that amount, you will give us less. So they realize that you're going to work hard to double the impact of their gift. And what we do is gather several donors together to create more than one match. If I were to give $1 and found out that I will get $3 of match for my gift, that's a very powerful incentive for a donor. And we can all create our own donor matches. So now we talk about the steps for getting a personal visit. You've looked at your donor base, you've seen where your gifts are coming from, you've created a list of donors. What I use in major gift campaigns is a process of identifying the right people to visit. And I use what I call the RFM method of identification. You may have simple record keeping, you may have donor software or CRM software that you use. Hopefully you can get to, even with a simple Excel spreadsheet, you can create a list of your donors. Now, when I talk about RFM, R stands for recency. Who gave me a gift the most recently? There's a rule of thumb in fundraising. The person most likely to give you a gift gave you a gift the most recently. It seems counterintuitive, but if you do the non-ask communications in between, you will find this to be a good indicator. Then there is the frequency of giving. Do they give once a year? Do they give many times a year? When was the last time they gave? Is it once a year? Is it twice a year? It's good to know the frequency. And then there's the monetary size of their gift. And I use for myself when I do research on my folks that might contribute is the total amount that they've given in our records to our charity. You may create your own formula for how you will identify people. I create a 5-point system on recency and I create my own. If they gave this year, that's a 5. If they gave last year, that's a 4. If they gave the year before and it's been 2 years, that's a 3, and so forth. You may use a different ranking. Then for frequency, the same might apply. Use a 5-point system on how often. Now, if I have somebody who has given 100 gifts in their last lifetime, maybe that'll be a 5. If they've given 50, maybe that will be a 4, and so forth, going down the scale. And then monetary size, the total giving during their lifetime. I will rank that based on some scale, based on my total number of donors and just looking at my own scale, because it's different for every single organization. So I will add those little ranking numbers that I've created in my spreadsheet, and I will total those up and get my top numbers to look at. Those are the people that I might visit first or start to build a relationship with first. Building the relationship step by step, sometimes that's the part that can cause a little bit of anxiousness. How do I do this? Is it a cold call? Is it a warm call? How do I do that? Well, the good news is if you've got people with high recency, high frequency, high monetary size, they know you well. And if that is where you're starting, that makes it a little bit easier. But there is a way to make it easier still to get a personal visit. And I'm just going to show you sort of a global look at your donors and how you might build your donors towards that invitation or that ask to get together with them, either by phone or in person. First of all, you've identified your folks that give. And you've used your own sort of methods, looking at their average gift sizes, their recency, their frequency, their monetary capability. Some of you may have donor prospect research available to you. That's something that I won't talk about today, but that can also help you as well to determine who might be the most capable on your list. So then you introduce them to your charity. There can be a lot of different ways that you introduce them. There might be just a simple letter saying, I'm John Clockey. I work for St. John Paul II Catholic Schools. I thank you for your giving that you've given over the years. My job is to help, and here's what we do with our mission, and here's what we do, and no ask or anything, just an introduction. I hope one day perhaps we'll be able to visit. Then you might use an event to invite them. You might invite them to a special event where you're going to talk about your school or your college or your hospital or your social service agency. It might be a dinner, or it might be coffee and a dessert, or it might just be a small group meeting. Or perhaps you will just, invite them to come and take a tour. During that event, that is your opportunity to inform them. That event might even be just a video that you've invited them to watch. It might not even be an event where they're physically somewhere. During that event, you inform them about your charity. Tell them about the good work that you're doing. Tell them things like, of every dollar given, so much percent goes directly to those in need. Think about it as you're at a stockholder meeting and you're informing a room full of investors why they should consider investing in you. At those events, you'll start to see people who have an interest. You will be able to interest them. You'll be able to even call them after an event and say, what did you think about our letter? What did you think about our video? What did you think about our dinner that we held? What did you like about it? You might also ask them to volunteer for your cause and involve them. Perhaps it's being on a board that works to manage your charity. Perhaps it's working in the front office, stuffing envelopes and mailings. Perhaps it's somebody that has a good ability to photograph or videotape and can help you with your mission. Many, many ways. It's limited only by your creativity. Then there comes a point where you ask them to invest in your cause. And we're going to talk about that meeting or that proposal, that process. So you'll ask them to invest. And if they give a gift to your campaign, the final step is impact. Your communications for the next year need to demonstrate over and over again the impact of their gift. Keep reminding them that their gift, first of all, was used in the way you said it would be used. And then what was the impact when they used it in that way? So that's a very simple, we call the 7 I's of fundraising. And you notice that I have 8 because I added impact, and that's usually the missing step. Tell them about impact and communicate with them. So what I do is I send a letter to somebody that I'd like to visit with, and I tell them that I'd like to visit with them and talk about our organization. And then I tell them that I will call them in about a week to see if they might have some time to visit with me. Then I've warmed up the call so that by the time I call, they already know. And I'm very upfront with them. I tell them, I'm not going to be asking you for a gift. I simply want to thank you for your giving and give you a report on our charity. So when we're in that meeting, If we are lucky enough to have a phone call or an in-person meeting, we thank them throughout that meeting, and we thank them for all of the impact. We get to know them in this meeting. In fact, this first meeting that we might have, I often refer to it as a discovery visit. It's really discovering who they are, what they like about our charity, why do they give to our charity. And then unlike today when I'm doing all the talking, I use the technique, listen more than you talk. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. So do a lot of listening in this initial visit. It's very important. Demonstrate the impact that gifts to your organization gave this past year or the past 5 years, whatever is the most impactful statements that you can share. Perhaps you have a certain number of graduates. Perhaps that's increasing. Perhaps you know what some of your graduates have done. Maybe it's a medical procedure that only your hospital has been able to successfully provide. Ask them how your organization is doing. This is one of the most important questions, and he who asks the questions can control the conversation. Ask them how your organization is doing and be ready to listen to their honest feedback and be ready to do something if there are things that need to be improved. Make notes and let them know what you're going to do with the input that they are giving you. There's an old saying that when you ask for money, you get advice. And when you ask for advice, you get money. It's very true. People want to be involved and they want to be heard. Also ask them how they like to be recognized for their giving. Some people want to be anonymous. And if you were to recognize them publicly, they would be very disappointed. Ask them what they like. Do they like a letter? Do they like it to be invited to an event? Do they just want to be anonymous and not have any thanks whatsoever? And then here is a very important question that I always try to ask for major capital campaign fundraising. Mr. and Mrs. Donor, what is the most satisfying gift you've ever made to any charity? Not just ours. It might be ours, but to any charity. What is, and why was it satisfying to you? This is going to tell you everything about their charitable giving and what they prefer. Listen to them to learn about their likes and their dislikes. Let's just say, well, the most satisfying gift I gave was to an orphanage because we love children and we think that these children need a good home. Well, perhaps your charity has programs that help children. That's an important thing to know. Thank them again, and then this is not a visit where you'll ask for money, though sometimes it can happen that they will ask you if they can make a gift. That will happen. But thank them and ask them the most important question. You mentioned in our conversation that, let's say, children or X is important to you. At our organization, we do this, this, and this for children or this kind of need, and it is very important work. We have a program that does this very well. We thank you for your giving, and as you consider gifts to us in the future, would you be open to us sending you proposals for a gift to do this kind of work for children, let's say? They will likely say yes to a proposal because you've listened to them. You've heard what they are interested in, and then you have asked to do a proposal. Now, what if what you provide as a service was not what they listed? That just simply tells you that you have some work to do to inform them about what you do. You can still say, well, you know, are you interested in this kind of work that we talked about today? And then you can still ask if you can send a proposal in the future. They may say no, but oftentimes they will say yes. This sets you up for the next step of solicitation. Now you will ask for money, but they've given you permission to send them something. That's a big, big difference. And now some closing thoughts on capital campaigns and fundraising. Tip number 1, the silent phase of a capital campaign and the 70% rule. The 70% is an arbitrary number that I use, but as has been said by Charles and others, you want to build a successful momentum for your campaign, and you want to ask leaders, those capable of the largest gifts, during a silent phase and get those gift totals together so that when you have reached 70% of your goal, or in some cases 60%, you can announce a public phase to the campaign. And you can say, oh yes, and oh, by the way, we're at 70% of our goal already. Please join us and see how fast we can get to the final goal. Tip number 2, being donor-centered in the capital campaign, the either or rule. If you have the opportunity to sit down with a donor and your capital campaign has multiple parts to it, multiple funds, it's good to share with them all of those funds and maybe even style your campaign where they can pick one of the funds in that campaign that they would prefer to give to, although they could give a gift that benefits all portions of the campaign. Tip number 3 in fundraising, do not ask for a gift until you have thanked the donor at least 2 times for their last gift and have communicated the impact of their gift so that they are satisfied with the relationship that they currently have with you. And as I mentioned before, I would say 5 to 7 communications as a guideline, but at least make sure that you have thanked them a couple of times in between. We all have different levels of staff and resources, and we may not be able to do everything, but if you count all communications and events in that 5 to 7, I think we can all get there. Tip number 4, fundraising is not asking for money. Well, fundraising is thanking, it's communicating impact, it's getting to know what your donors' interests are. If you do the first 3 of these and ask not for a gift, but permission to submit a proposal for a gift that has fit their interests, it is a method that has worked for me time and time again. And so at that, I will say thank you, and back to you, Tosin.
Thank you so very much, John Claude. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful presentation. If we thought fundraising was a piece of cake, you've opened our eyes to the strategic dimension of fundraising. It is more scientific in my view because you spoke to principle. You spoke about the RFM method, and that was quite enlightening. The rule of the thumb here, the recencies of the donors, the frequencies of giving, and the monetary side. These are things to consider. Then you spoke about the need to build relationship, be quick to thank your donors. These are things that you can't really get from any book. Thank you so very much, John Clark. We appreciate your time here. It's wonderful, and we look forward to having you again some other time. All right. As we move ahead in this series of presentation, let me quickly remind us that we've had presentation from Professor Charles Okibo, who has spoken on fundraising and capital campaigns and strategic communication. We listened to Professor Bartholomew Okolo, who has given us the restructuring the emerging landscape for resource mobilization in Nigerian higher education. And opening address give us the need for us to begin to build fundraising as an essential part of running our higher institution. So we'll be going to the next presentation now, and I'll be calling on again Professor Okibo. If Professor Okibo is ready, you may have to take the presentation of Betsy Birmingham, who is unavoidably absent here. Professor Charles Okibo is a professor emeritus of strategic communication from North Dakota State University. This will be the second time he'll be giving us another dose of his beautiful presentation. Professor Charles Okibo, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tosin. And thank you all
Thank you very much, Professor.
participants. Thank you all participants for a week. I think if we can see you, we'll see that you are all awake. But if you are like some of my students, they have learned the careful act of sleeping with their eyes open. And some of you might be practicing that. I'm going to represent Betsy Birmingham. This is a presentation that Betsy will have liked to give herself because she has taught fundraising and capital campaigns at my university for many years before she moved over to Canada, her home country. And when we found out she couldn't be here with us today, we invited her colleague, Kelly Sassy, who took over from Betsy in teaching fundraising at NDSU.
Well done.
And unfortunately, Kelly couldn't be here either. But both of them promised they would like to come in April when we have something like a tutorial. It's easy for us to talk to you in this one-way communication and think you've learned everything. But we'd like to come back if Professor Mba can arrange it at the end of next month, maybe 23rd, 25th, or 27th of April next month, for a time when we would like to listen more to you than talk to you. And so we are hoping that next month, many of you who are here today will come back with questions and comments and suggestions and your own ideas of how fundraising and capital campaigns can or cannot work. So this presentation is Betsy's formulation to emphasize the need that fundraising is not asking for money, as John told us. And it might be resource mobilization, as Professor Kolo has reminded us, but that mobilization has to deal with people. And after this presentation, you will listen to Professor Ladi Adamu from ABU give you some case studies. The common strand among all these presentations is people. Let's go to the next slide, where we tell you that fundraising is impossible if you don't have people. And we have all kinds of people involved in planning for fundraising activities. The better the people involved, the better your outcome. And these people are usually staff. You have to begin with your own staff. Who do you have working for you? You are paying them. And so you can dictate the tune, the staff that are employees. And then for universities, you have to work with students. You can't succeed in fundraising, and John knows this from his days at Valley State University, without working with students. Students as volunteers who are not paid. But sometimes students who are paid, just a little amount of money for them to be actively engaged. Professor Kolo called it incentivization. There must be something in it for them to be giving up their time to work for you. Very importantly, alumni. You can't do university fundraising without alumni. That's the starting point. And in fact, the Jackson Building campaign was started, is being run, and will be concluded on the heads of alumni. If the alumni didn't start it, we, the teachers, wouldn't even have thought about it. The university is engaged in its own capital campaign, but the university hasn't even involved us as alumni. That's how unprepared and unstrategic they are. You need alumni because alumni are proud of their institution. And they know that wherever they go, it is the flag of the universities that they attend that will get them to the next position, that will show them to be good graduates of communication because you attended the oldest university or the oldest communication program in the country.
Mind their paper.
Or because you were taught by the best teachers. So alumni, very critical. But so are parents. parents of students, parents of alumni, and then many others. There are prospective students that can be cultivated. But fundraising is impossible without people. People as volunteers, people as donors. They have no connection with the university, but they like to give. Professor Kolo was able to extract 750 million naira from Capital Oil, Ifeanyi Oba, who is not even a graduate, let alone a graduate of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. So there are some donors who might not be employees, they might not be alumni, they might not be parents, but they're just looking for an opportunity to give and make a name for themselves. I think when Ifeanyi Oba pledged 750 million, of which I think he redeemed 350 million, he was hoping that UNM will give him an honorary degree. When he found that UNM doesn't give away honorary degrees like other universities, he probably changed his mind. But by then we had already extracted more than 350 million. So donors come in all shapes. Then there are media people who must work with us. The story of a successful campaign begins to be told in the media. It's not in the lunch hall. It's not in the VC's office. It's not in the office of the donors. It's in the media. And very often, special media. We must cultivate people who cover education. They must be our friends, particularly our alumni who are on the education desk of many media houses. Next, you have to work with consultants. If we had time today, John Clockey will have told you that his work with universities and with JP2 Catholic School Network has to begin with consultants, because we, as the people who implement these strategic plans, cannot know it all. We need consultants to help us with research, with prospect research. We need consultants to help us with IT. We need consultants to help us with record keeping. So consultants are critical. Perhaps the most important of all these groups is the advisory board. You must have an advisory board group that is helping you in all your planning and all your implementations. Let's move on. The critical task is for you to identify the talents you need. Next slide, please. You have to identify the talents you need. Advisory board members don't inject themselves onto our projects. They have to be invited. And so it's important for you to identify who can do what. Batokolo has given us some ideas of the kind of people that should be involved. People of worth, because they can give. People of integrity, because we know that they made their money through honest means, and we want to be associated with them. People who are passionate about our mission, because they see a congruence between what they want to do in life, what they want their legacy to be, and what we are doing as an institution. So identifying those board members, we begin with an environmental scan. Scan the environment to know who is available there, who is who can help us, who is credible, who has money, who has time. And the media and interpersonal sources will be where we begin. If you look at the media on a daily basis, there are people who are projecting themselves or who are being projected by the media as people of honor and integrity. Then snowball technique means that if we identify Emeka Anyoko as one of our advisory board members and we approach him, we will ask him, please, sir, do you know anybody else like you that we can invite to join you? Chances are he will have 2 or 3 names. And then you consider those names. That's what we mean by snowball. You choose one board member, and that board member helps you choose other board members. The third step is to qualify them, to eliminate unqualified people. Emeka Anyoko can recommend somebody, but you find that, well, we already have too many people in that category. We don't like, we won't appoint them, we won't inform them. So you qualify and eliminate. Qualification means they are people of integrity. It also means they have the kind of money that we'll be looking for. Because the primary task for advisory board members is to begin by giving. We will involve them to go and solicit. But when they go to solicit, they can't be asking people to give when they themselves haven't given. So advisory board members are not just there to speak big grammar and advise us. They are there to lead, to show by example that this is a worthy cause. So you eliminate them and then find people who they may have money, but we don't want to associate with them. Obi Kubana could be begging you to involve him, and you just say, nope, you are not the kind of people we want. You can go to organizations that value your values, but even though you are a lion, from what we hear about you, we will keep you at arm's length. So, recruiting and inviting board members. It's important for you to know why people will accept your invitation. And the only reason why they will accept your invitation is part of what John refers to as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They are not accepting it because they will make money from you. They're not accepting it because it will improve their standing in society. They're accepting it because it helps them to feel actualized. That it's at a very high level. Has nothing to do with money or exposure in the media, but it makes them feel fulfilled. It makes them have a sense of satisfaction that I have lived my life the way I intended it. So you have to think about why people accept to serve. And know also that people have different reasons for serving. It's possible that one of the prospective board members may be aspiring for political office, and they might think that doing this will elevate them. Allow them if they meet your other qualifications. Then you have to worry about how to ask them to join the board. In fundraising and capital campaigns, how you make the ask can determine the kind of reaction or response you get. John had told you already that even before you make an ask of somebody to give you money, you must have interacted with them 6 to 7 different times, which is what we don't do well in Nigeria. The first time UNN will go to Peter Obi will be to hand him a letter saying we are appointing you chairman of our advisory board. That will be the first time. The first time you will ever go to Dangote's office is when you think you want to make him chief launcher. But John is right. Nobody gives to strangers, not even Abiola in his days, not even Ato Eze when he was giving out 1,000 naira and was known as Ato 1,000. He was selective. And so you have to know how to ask. Very often you have to know who should do the ask. The asker can determine the kind of reaction you get. You know that from your universities, that if you want something from the current VC, you better know who should go and tell him about it. Should it be our head? Or should it be the dean? Or should it be somebody outside our department? In my days at Nsukka, when Chimere Ikoku was the vice chancellor, we had a colleague in history who had no role in the university, but he was a relative of Chimere Ikoku. And we actually call him the VC Anahuanya, the VC you could see, because he had a way of getting whatever he wanted from Chimere Ikoku. So you must know who will do the asking. And then fourthly, you must know how to address rejections. Not everybody you ask will say yes and jump on board. When they reject, should you sulk away or should you come back more prepared, knowing that the only reason why they rejected was because you didn't do your homework? If you really need them, you shouldn't just suck away and feel rejected. No, you go back, reload your gun, and come back with more ammunition and make it impossible for them to say no. Finally, it's good for you to think about gratitude for service. Professor Kolo referred to it as recognition. How do they want to be recognized? Some people give anonymously. Professor Ladi Adamu will talk to you this afternoon about an anonymous donor who gave 1 billion naira to his alma mater, but said on the condition that you don't tell who I am. So they have 1 billion from a Nigerian, an Igbo man who went to government college Umuahia, and he said, don't tell them I gave you this money. So you must know, how do they want to be recognized? Yeah, so let's move on to the next slide. So I will talk about training board members for success. How do you train them? There are various ways you train them, but first of all, is to begin with the topic for training. And the topic very often should come from them. So begin with a needs assessment. What do you need to be a successful board member? So you begin with asking them. John Clocker talked about talking less and listening more. This is an occasion where you need to listen to those prospective board members to know where are they lacking, where are they falling short, where do they think they need more support. And then training methods. How do you train them? 3 basic methods. Ideally, traditional way, face-to-face. Bring them to a room, bring a trainer, and then engage them. Don't lecture to them, because they are all responsible people who are successful in their own areas. But face-to-face is very critical, so that, as John said, they will mix with each other. They will know who is there, and they can interact among themselves and know at what levels they want to commit. So face-to-face. But these days, one of the collateral benefits from COVID is that we can now do Zoom. I'm talking to you from the US without even leaving my home office. Professor Kolo is talking to you from Enugu, and Tosin is moderating from Ibadan. And Professor Mba is there in Ottawa, Canada. So we are scattered everywhere. It's possible that Emeka Para is listening in from Abu Dhabi or Dubai, and Musa is listening in from California. So these days, it's possible for us to have training without anybody leaving their homes. So online training. And then thirdly, coaching. Training board members requires coaching. Coach them. You provide this instruction as in a classroom or by Zoom, but there is need for follow-up and monitoring. And then thirdly, third method is evaluation of your training to know, where are we succeeding, where are we failing, where should we repeat this training? It's our online assessment that is guiding us based on your comments to think that we need to come back in 1 month, end of April, for us to know how much did you gather from these 2 hours today, and how much more should we do? Jackson Professional Development Series will be suboptimal in its results if it keeps jumping from one topic to another, to another, to another. It's good for us to assess, evaluate our training, and see, are there some topics we should repeat a couple of times to make sure that people will grab something before we move on to something else. And then finally, it's important to communicate results. You have to show your board members the results of their performance and whether their underperformance can be corrected through training. I want to now end by talking about recommendations. Recommendations. Betsy, Kelly, and I have 5 recommendations, and we hope you take them to heart. It's impossible to succeed, and John Clockey will be the first person to admit this, if you don't have a board of advisors. You are not God. You don't know it all. You need advisors. Ideally, a diverse pool, men, women, professionals, teachers, students, alumni, donors. You need to have advisors. Professor Kolo was successful because he had people advising him and telling him, Oga, do it this way. Oga, don't bring this man, no, otherwise he's a troublemaker. So you must have a board of advisors. In your capital campaign for your Jackson building at UNN, how good is your board? If it's not good, dissolve, reconstitute. You can't succeed without advisors who will be guiding you. All you students and alumni are limited in your experiences with rich Nigerians. And therefore, you need advisors who will guide you. Secondly, don't just choose them because you like them. Choose them because they are talented in the areas where you need them. Choose them because they have time for you. There are talented people who are too busy. Pat Otome is talented and he has time, which is why I'm sure he's already in the air now. He's traveling today, but had to find time to come and talk to you before he left. You must find people like him and make sure they have something to contribute and they have time for you. Thirdly, you must measure performance systematically and objectively. There is a reason why we give you quizzes as students, why we test you for midterm, why we give you a final, and then we put them all together and say we have so many 2-1s, we have so many 2-2s. You must measure performance. Even the performance of the board must be measured systematically. There is a rubric for measuring, and it must be objective. It's not because I like them or I don't like her, and therefore I mark her down. Objectively. And then the people you're assessing, those board members, will look at the performance record and agree with you. In fact, I didn't do very well in bringing new donors. Therefore, I should do better. Fourthly, we recommend you have some clear reward and punish systems. Professor Kolo was clear on that. There must be some incentives for people to give up their time. You must give them rewards. What I want may be different from what Professor Ochefu wants, may be different from what Ladi Adamu wants. It's for you to find out what we want and then give us what we want. Igbo people have a proverb that when you pay somebody with what they like, they will hardly say no. They say whether it's complete or incomplete, you will take it. But when you pay them with something they don't like, even if you think you're overpaying them, they won't take it. So measuring performance is very critical. And so is rewarding, so that your rewards will be based on their performance. Lastly is public communication. Public communication is critical because both organizations and their donors like to have their stories told publicly. So who is telling our good stories? People must be telling our good stories because naturally it's only bad stories that make the news. And so we have to work strategically to make sure there is good story to tell. And that good story better be one that projects our image and will help us recruit board members who will help us meet our fundraising targets so that we will make them happy. Their joy is to see us succeed. Finally, I want to give you a homework. I want to end with a homework. John has already given you some homework. Betsy, Kelly, and I want to leave you with a homework. And the homework is for the next meeting, which may be 1 month from now. Professor Mba will tell us. Maybe a month from now, Wednesday, April 27, maybe the same time, she will confirm that. We want you to come with examples of advisory board members you discovered after today, who are advisory board members that you would like to recommend to the Jackson Fundraising Capital Campaign for your magnificent building? So your assignment is think about board members to recommend. And then you can bring this to the next meeting on April 27 or a date that Professor Mba will tell you. But it's important for us to engage with you beyond that you are just sitting there and listening to us. So in conclusion, I want to emphasize again that fundraising, as John told you, is not asking for money. Fundraising is making friends. And you make friends from people as staff, employees, students, alumni, parents who identify with us. You make friends with people as volunteers. You just brought them to help us. You make friends with people as donors. Critically, you have to make friends with people in the media. I'm hoping that Jacksonites in the media will take a special interest in this development series and be able to formulate good stories. We, the resource persons, will make ourselves available to you, answer any questions you have so that you can tell good stories about the Jackson School, about UNN, about your respective universities, if you are not a lion or a lioness. But it's important to work with good people in the media. And then consultants. John will be available to offer advice to any group that is interested in launching a capital campaign or a fundraising drive. Finally, I want to once again thank you, particularly Professor Mba and Tosin Bakare and Pat Otomi, and all those who were working in the background, without whom we wouldn't have this webinar. So far, technology is favorable to us, and I'm so happy for the opportunity to be with you again after so many years of leaving the Jackson School at Nsukka. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Professor Charles Okigbo. Thank you very much. To be honest, it's really unfair to constrain you to such limited time for these beautiful presentations you've delivered. It's not easy to have this array of professors to speak within 2 hours. And it's at this point I want to appreciate everyone who has been quietly listening to the presentations. I know we'll stretch our time, but we'll see how we can do within the next 20 minutes to round up. But we have this next presentation. If Professor Ladia Adamu is around, she will be leading us in 4 case studies in fundraising and capital campaigns. Professor Ladia Adamu is the professor of broadcasting. He successfully handled quite a number of fundraising, and he has great experiences in many successful fundraising in higher institutions. Professor Ladia Adamu, if you're around.
Tosin, she'll be joining us shortly. There's a technical glitch. I would suggest that we take up a couple of questions. Okay. Are you here?
I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. Okay,
yeah.
Great. We worked it out.
Yeah.
Finally, Professor Ladi, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. And I have 5 case studies, not 4.
Is it me? I'm struggling to hear Professor Ladia Adamu here.
There's an upgrade.
Okay, I think we have the slides.
Hello. Hello.
Hear you, Professor Ladi. Please continue with your presentation.
Her network. We can hear you.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Professor Ladi. Yeah. I think there is a technical hitch here. While we're waiting for Professor Ladia Adamu to put together her presentation. If you have questions, you may just drop them in the comment section and you'll be recognized. Professor Ladia. I think to save time, we might just Ochefu, who is our respondent. So far, we've listened to Professor Kibo, we've listened to John Clockey, we've listened to Professor Bartolomeo Kolo, and we are about to listen to Professor Adamu, but we can see that we're having some difficulties. While we're waiting for her to put that together, Professor Ochefu, if you are there, Professor Ochefu is the General Secretary, Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigeria. He was at one time the Vice Chancellor of a private university in Taraba. Professor Yakubu Ochefu, if you're around, please, can we hear your responses, please? Professor Ochefu?
You muted?
Okay, let's see, Professor Ochefu. Professor Ochefu is here, yeah.
Hello.
All right, I think he's on now.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear
Hello.
you. You're welcome, Professor Ochefu. We can hear you now, Professor.
Oh, thank you very much. Sorry, I have to join from, I'm traveling. I'm in a car headed in Abuja, but I have to join because I was trying to make sure that I'm part of this project, part of this program, and it's been fantastic.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I wish I'm in a place where I can make more contribution. That you hear sounds of cars. It's not very quiet where I am, but by God's grace, if I get to where I'm heading to, I will make some input. Thank you very much, Tosin.
Thank you so very much, Professor Yakubu Ochefu, who is in transit now. At this point, I would like to call on if you have any question you want to put across. We've listened to beautiful presentations so far in over 2 hours. We've listened to fundraising and capital campaign and strategic communication by Professor Charles Okibo. Structuring. Hello, Professor Ladi, are you back? Okay. John Clockey gave us insight into how to go about fundraising. The fundraising is not just about asking for money, it's about building relationships and carefully leading people to the point where when you make your request, you will not be turned down. And we've listened to Professor Charles Okibo, who has given us insight into the things you need to put together to get your advisory board for fundraising intact. It said fundraising is impossible without a solid alumni. It said no alumni, no fundraising. It spoke about why consultants are critical to fundraising. He also spoke about the need for you to befriend your donors. Nobody gives to strangers. He spoke about the need for you to know how to handle rejection. And he gave beautiful recommendations. The need for you to have advice that are worthy in character. The need for you spoke about how you need to learn how to measure performance and how to reward and punish the system. And the need for you to engage the PR angle of public communication. At this point, I'll be willing to take questions. Would Professor Chinedumba, if you could just help me look at the questions that are available, then yes.
Okay, so do you want me to read out the questions?
Please read the question, Professor Chinedumba. Go ahead.
Beg your pardon? Okay, so let's see, we've got here a gentleman, sorry, there are quite a number of comments, so I'm just scrolling through. Well, lots of comments here. Okay, we have a gentleman who's has a project is running, and he's asking about resources for identifying potential donors in the health sector. So if you could refer him to any resources for identifying potential donors in the health sector.
Okay. Resources for identifying potential donors. I'm sure Professor Okibo.
Okay,
Want to say something about that? And if Professor Bartholomew Okolo is still, I have some beautiful comments here. Yeah, go ahead, Professor.
Okay, and then we have Professor Onwunari. Professor Onwunari has his hand up. Professor Onwunari, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm Professor Onwunari George Will. I'm the Vice Chancellor, University of Port Harcourt. I want to commend, the program. I was actually invited to this platform by a former Vice Chancellor of the River State University, Professor Ashinewu, who sent me the link. Quite interesting so far, but I just want to ask a question. My question is, what is the cost of fundraising and capital campaign? What is the cost? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Kibo, would you like to start off on that, and then you can pass the baton on to other presenters?
Yeah, okay. Welcome, Professor Onwunari. We are happy you are here. And you've asked a pertinent question: what's the cost? John Batokolo and I have different answers, but the common term in our answers is it depends. It depends on your scope, depends on what you are doing, depends on when you are doing this, depends where you are doing this, depends on your constituency, depends how much money you are looking for. What it costs you to raise 10 billion naira is not the same as what it will cost you to raise 1 million naira. Yeah, so everything begins with a strategic plan. What is our plan? You don't do fundraising like we do in Nigeria. Nsukka brought together people and say, Peter Obi, come and launch our fundraising. I hope you're not doing that in Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt, the garden city, is full of rich people, every corner. You don't even know them because they are ordinary people, but they're also damn rich. So rich that the entire city of Port Harcourt was engulfed in smoke the other day because they were all prospecting for oil and distilling and refining oil in their backyards and making more money than NNPC, more money than the government. Port Harcourt is full of rich people everywhere. Some of them were my classmates in Ife. Yeah, so VC, it depends on your plan, but you can't do anything on your own. You are probably professor of something, but not communication. You are not professor of fundraising and capital campaigns. And so you don't know this thing as much as we do. I taught it in Nsukka, taught it in Lagos, taught it in Kenya, have been teaching it here in the US for 24 years. John Clockey worked in a university and used consultants. In fact, because we didn't have time, John didn't tell you that when he came to the university, he found that they had been running a capital campaign for years and not meeting their target. And so they had the problem of, should we continue with this indefinitely or what? John advised them and they accepted. Kill it, stop where you are, and let's begin afresh. So VC, the answer is simple. You can do a capital campaign with nothing, no money at all, no budget. But it means you'll be limited in your consultants, you'll be limited in your volunteers, you'll be limited in your advisory board, you'll be limited in the students you involve, you'll be limited in the media that you get to cover your story. Or you can do it with a strategic plan. That's why we say fundraising and capital campaigns are strategic communication. They are strategic communication because you set your target. the first time you are doing it in your university, you better not set a target of 200 billion. Set a target that you can achieve. My university here, the first capital campaign we did about 14 years ago, the target was $50 million. And that was the first time. People thought we couldn't raise $50 million. We did. In the end, we raised 54 million. And that told the president, equivalent of vice chancellor, that there is money here. So when we launched our last capital campaign that ended 3 months ago, the target was $500 million. In the end, we raised $514 million. So, Mr. Vice Chancellor, it depends. John and I can talk to you offline and guide you on the steps you will take and how much money you should target to raise. As I told you during my presentation, if you target too high,
thank you very much, fail. Professor.
Yeah. If you target too low, you will be leaving out people who could have given to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Chancellor Kibo. I thank you. You've made the good point. Thank you very much, sir. The point has been well taken. Professor Matthew Oluwamukomi is asking if we could recommend a consultant for him because he's raising a capital campaign for his institution. Professor Matthew, the list of speakers here, any one of them would do justice to your question. And we have another question from, okay, I think it's the same question from Professor Matthew. Now we have Professor Adamu back here. If Professor Adamu can quickly run through his paper, her paper will be will be grateful if you can do that in 10 minutes. Professor Adamu, are you back? Professor Ladi Sandra Adamu. If Professor Ladi Sandra Adamu is not around, in the absence of that, John Clockey, okay, somebody's raising her hand or his hand. Ijoma, okay. Kireke, you want to ask a question? Unmute yourself and please go ahead. Chukwemeka Okereke.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Good afternoon. Okay, good evening, everyone.
Yes, please go ahead with your question. We can hear you clearly.
Okay. I want to thank Professor Okibo for that inciting.
Okay, please go ahead, Chukwemeka. You are back online.
Okay. I want to thank Professor Okibo for that inciting teaching that he just made. So I have a question. In one of his slides, he made mention of appreciation and penalty, that's punishment. So for donors, I want to know, in case you have a donor that has been donating to your fundraising legitimately in the presence of the media, and then all of a sudden he's caught in a web of corruption and many wrongdoings, what are you to do in this kind of situation?
Okay. It's a problem we encounter nearly on a daily basis here in the US. The most recent example is Temple University in Philadelphia benefited exceedingly from Bing Crosby. Bill Crosby has given possibly up to $100 million setting up projects and programs in Temple University. When we was caught up with the scandal, the first thing Temple did was take his name off from their honor list. Yeah, so there is punishment for people who transgress after they have been known to be generous with us. And it's the kind of company we don't want to keep because it will cost us in the eyes of the public. So that's the simplest punishment. Or you just keep them at arm's length. If you don't want to dissociate openly with them, because it's not clear yet that they're actually guilty or they have been found guilty, you can keep them at arm's length. Let them know they are not welcome at your events. They are not your enemy as such, but they are no longer regarded to be people at the high pedestal where they were before the crisis developed. I mentioned Obi Kubana. Actually, we don't have anything specifically against Obi Kubana, but the way he makes noise is not the way we want to associate with our university. And so even if he comes to us willing to give, we will probably treat him with cold shoulders. So there is appreciation, which we do generously and graciously. But there is also punishment that if you don't do well, we will dissociate with you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so very much, Professor. Yeah, Mr. Okereke, I'm sure your question has been well answered. Please, I would like John Clark to come in here and Professor Bartholomew Polo to also contribute to the discussion. John Clark, if you can hear me, pardon me, I can pronounce your name as John Clark. Please go ahead and make your contribution to the questions asked.
To the same question, did you say?
Yes, please.
Yes. I agree with what Charles said, and I would add that I've had instances where donations from one particular person that was not well liked caused another person not to give. And so there's good reasons to look at, is the message and the personality of this person in line with our mission? Is this what our mission is about? If it's not, I think there are so many donors that appreciate that you disconnected or distanced yourself from that donor. They will appreciate that, and they may step in to become a donor to take up that slack.
Thank you so very much. Okay, well answered. Finally, we have Professor Ladisandra Damo. I'll not be too happy. If you can, Damo, please go ahead straight away. Over to you now.
Are you muted, Prof?
Professor Ladisandra?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you,
we
please.
can.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you.
We actually have limited time now. You're welcome back.
Are you muted?
No, I think we just lost due to, I guess it's network. Mr. Solomon Iyam is saying his question has not been answered, please. Could you unmute yourself, Solomon Iyam, and ask that question?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Solomon
all right.
Iyam,
I want to
unmute yourself and ask your question. Well, now she's back. We can hear you. Hold on, Solomon.
Yeah. I can hear you. Okay, next slide, please.
Please go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for you.
Okay.
Okay, I want to sincerely thank the organizers of this webinar section. I think I've really taken a lot, and I want to say thank you very much to all the presenters. My question is, I'm currently running a PhD program at the University of Port Harcourt, and it is a self-funded project. And then where I'm working, my take-home is very small, not to even talk of raising the school fees and then all of that. And then oftentimes I need to take a loan, so either pay school fees or to do one presentation or the other. And then I'm currently supposed to start my research laboratory, but due to lack of funding, I'm currently stuck somewhere. So I want to sincerely ask if there are suggestions you could maybe provide for me to maybe kind of raise some funds to enable me go ahead with my research. As I'm going to be doing I'll be doing a whole lot of genomic studies.
Questions
looking at them. So I will be looking at HIV genetic diversity in HIV positive patients. in Cross River State.
I can't hear you much.
Thank you,
My
Mr.
network
Solomon.
is very bad.
We'll get back to you on your question. Let's allow Professor Ladia Damo to go with her presentation. Professor Ladia Damo, please go ahead with your presentation now. Thank you. All right, yeah.
You can hear me, Tosin?
Yes, I can hear you, Professor Ladia. Please go ahead. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Who is running the slide? Okay. The refresher actually is more like an introduction. Before joining the university, I had worked first in the Nigerian mission in Atlanta, Georgia, as the public relation officer of the Nigerian Consulate General. Then also did some fundraising activities for my local government in Plateau State. Then this fifth case study is the BBC World Service Trust campaign I was involved in. So basically, what exactly is it is to raise funds for the development of higher institutions in Nigeria. And this is the practice of raising money to support educational enrichment programs by schools or school groups. So I don't want to waste more time on that. Now, how do we do that? In addition to what I said earlier, the alumni of a university or the parent-teacher associations of various schools use creative ways to raise funds through aggressive advertising, grant writing, as well as straightforward donation requests. So the case study I was handling the first time, case study one is Ahmadu Bello University, straightforward donation request by the Vice Chancellor to Aliko Dangote to build a student hostel. And based on that hostel project, BOA decided, that is Abdul Samad Rabiu, decided also to actually build another hostel for students in the university. This is what we call straightforward donation, a kind of intervention. So case study 2, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, inspired by an old student in the, like Peter Obi, and the total amount is 5 billion. And what he did was to task 10,000 alumni to pay 100,000 each in a year. And that kind of, by at least each year, he ran the way he structured the campaign is to be run in 5 years. Each year is 1 billion naira, and 10,000 old students or alumni will donate 100,000 naira every year, and that will amount to 1 billion naira. So that's the way he planned it. And this this money is meant for accommodation, library, and other structures in the university. So, and I believe it is going on fine. Next one, next slide. Case study 3, Yobe State Government. Revitalization of education in a war-torn area, that is Yobe State. Remember where Leah Sharibu was abducted, and you know, and what happened is that based on that, many lives. So now they are trying to revitalize this education by now bringing new. In fact, they are building new schools. They set up a committee, and that committee is to handle this project. and it's a 25 billion naira project. And this project, the donors are known faces like Dahiru Manga, Nigeria Governors Forum, Aliko Dangote, Rabiu Abdul Samad, well, the money is still trickling in, but work has started. And I think by next session, they should be on. Then case study 4, Government College Umuahia, is a transformation of the old school. This school was built in 1929 and is rated as the best secondary school in Nigeria among the government colleges. It has about 600 hectares of land, large expanse of land. And this is the school of Chinua Achebe, Amadi, and Sarawiwa. And the interesting thing about this capital fundraiser is that children of the deceased Old Boys Association are being brought in to also contribute to the capital project of the school. And one donor remained anonymous, like some of the things Professor Okolo was saying and John, that some people can be anonymous. He gave 1 billion naira to the school. And the good thing is that the school is resuming next September. That is September this year. And they are building new hostels, new library, infrastructure, roads, libraries, and all kinds of, even they are working on water system. This is going to be like one of the best secondary schools in Nigeria, but it will only come on board by September 2022. Next slide, please. Next slide. Case study 3 is the one I was involved with, and that is a studio project, and it is funded by BBC World Service Trust for public enlightenment programs. And initially, 3 universities were selected to be centers of journalism training to meet global standards. But however, it was only ABU that was able to benefit from this. They actually started from ABU and they are supposed to go to University of Nigeria, Nsukka. From there, they go to Unilag in Lagos. But I think along the line, there were problems of funding. And, but we succeeded in ABU in getting the studio, the license, and the educational components of the project. I was running this project for 10 years, and it is a huge success, but also it has problems. And that problem is that when the sponsors or funding of the studio became a problem, and the sponsors had to leave Nigeria, and when they left, the ABU was bereft of funds to continue with the project, as we cannot take commercial to raise money due to limitations of license. This is more like a community radio. So we
David.
Hello? Okay.
Go ahead, please.
We cannot, run commercials because of the nature of our license, and the license is community radio, that is campus FM. And then the local community participation was very low, and they could not assist us in getting any headway. So that was the challenges, but that it worked, that we have a studio, we have an FM station, ABU FM, and it is working up to today. As I'm talking to you, it's online. Sorry, we are on air and people can listen to us. So it was a mixed bag of success and also challenges. Next one, please. Now, the challenges of fundraising in Nigeria, Challenge one is we have
we lost Professor Ladia Damu again. Can you hear me? Professor Ladia Damu? Oh. Could you please just go ahead with the slide so that I will continue from where Professor Ladia stopped? Yeah, she was speaking about the challenges of fundraising in Nigeria. Professor Ladia, are you back?
She's muted.
All right. She spoke about.
This one.
Okay. Professor Ladi. Let me see if I can unmute her.
Talking, no, get the answer first.
I go do you.
They like money. Let's see if you guys got some money where I don't know why.
Professor Ladi Adamu.
As your business.
Kindly unmute.
Yeah, you know what you mean by one.
hello?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
But sorry,
ahead,
the
Professor
network
Ladi.
is bad in Zaria, very bad.
That's okay.
So,
Go ahead.
Okay, like I said, one of the major challenges is that we have weak alumni networks and lack of alumni database. We also have lack of complete funding, like some funders will abandon you midway. I don't know, for some reasons best known to them. And also we have lack of community participation. You know, like sometimes the community is not very buoyant to assist some of these school projects. So, and if they are not involved at the initial stage, then you will run into problem like we did. Next slide. Next slide. Challenge 2. Getting the theme and reasons for fundraiser correct is always a major problem. And there has to be agreement across all stakeholders. Some people usually have their own idea how they want the campaign to be run, and some other people have different opinion. So this sometimes results into misunderstanding, you know, amongst stakeholders. Next slide, please. Challenge 3, lack or weak after fundraiser relationship management. Like John was saying, you don't just ask for money, but you develop a relationship between you and the people who you've selected to help you. So in Nigeria, we actually do not have such a fund, relationship. Professor Kibo was also saying something in that regard. You must have a relationship with them. And John said you need 7 stages, or how is it, Professor Okolo? Someone I remember, because my network is weak, that there is a stage in which you approach these people, you know, for help, and how you should follow up after they have given you help. So then finally we have personality, identity, ego. Some people, like it has been mentioned severally on this webinar, some people want the project to be named after them, or like someone said, a hall, or a kind of a certain segment. You want it to be named after somebody. So that constitutes identity ego. Next, please. Next slide. So in conclusion, fundraiser is a strategy for complementing official funds, deficit for school management. Secondly, alumni or old student association is a very strong platform for raising funds, especially in Nigeria. Third, we have clash of vision. where you have responsibility and commitment. This ruined fundraiser in Nigeria. Recommendations. School management and the government should develop a responsive national fundraiser policy. Schools should build, number 2, and maintain strong and responsive alumni association. Schools and stakeholders should develop and maintain clear vision and commitment for fundraiser in Nigeria education. I think this issue of fundraising is a bit new to Nigeria, and we need to develop it. If possible, have a national policy that can include fundraising under the advancement section of universities. Next slide, please. Yes, I have exercises for the students. The first one is define fundraiser using your understanding of the concept. 2, mention and briefly explain the possible forms of fundraiser. 3, mention a peculiar thing about fundraiser for education in Nigeria and explain how such peculiarity could be improved to develop fundraiser for education in the country. 4, explain how the new media has constituted another avenue for fundraiser for education and suggest how developing nations such as Nigeria can benefit from this. Next slide. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so very much, Professor Ladi Sandra Damu. Thank you very much. You brought us back to the classroom. Now, if anyone thought we've escaped the rigors of exercises, now there you go. 4 exercises for.
Yes.
For us all. Beautiful recommendations you've given. It has been a shifted presentation. Thank you very much. You've given clear case studies of UNN, of Ahmadu Bello University, of some other institutions, and you mentioned the successes and failures of fundraising. We want to appreciate you. We have not done badly with time. I want to call on Professor Chinedu Mba to give a vote of thanks as a roundup. Thank you. Thank you for everyone for coming. Professor Chinedu Mba.
Yes, thank you very much, Tosin. I'll just...
Yes, we are almost like 1 hour over.
Exactly. And so thanks everyone for being part of this. It's been a pleasure to have you and to have you stay this long. And very quickly before we all log off, I'd like to say that we plan to have a workshop following up from this. This is just nibbling at the goodies of fundraising. And we're lucky to have Mr. John Clockey, Professor Kibo, Professor Bath, Professor Adamu, and Professors Betty and Kelly, who will be joining us next time for the workshop. I would encourage you to keep an eye out for an email with a date, because this is going to be a more intimate session, so that people like Professor Munari, you might want to send people from your advancement office to be part of this workshop, because it will give them a great opportunity to interrogate questions and actually get some advice and recommendations from those who have the experience. Solomon, that will be a good session for you to attend. And so again, thank you so much. And I cannot end this without thanking my team. When we have a presentation like this, along with our presenters, thank you so much. The late nights, the many emails and text messages, and your patience, we're truly grateful. And for those I say that are in the engine room, some of them are here, Yvonne Mefo Anyekon and his team, Jeremiah Agada, our media partners, because without our media partners, our publicity would have gone bust. And so even though we're not fundraisers, we learned a couple of things from Mr. John Clockey and the rest of the team. And I'd like to thank you, Tosin, for doing such a marvelous job with the moderation. Once more, thank you. JPS, we run our seminars quarterly, but because fundraising is such a, I'd like to say it's pretty new here in Nigeria. I mean, doing it professionally. We're going to be running a couple of follow-up workshops because we think that we are at the cusp of something really great. So that'll be it from me. Thank you for attending. Tosi, back to you. Oh, and one more thing, there will be a survey just before you log off. Please do complete the survey. It gives us a sense of what it is you'd like to see next time. And that'll be it from me. Thank you so much for joining us. Tosin, back to you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the presenters, to all the professors. We'll be back to
everybody.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. We look forward to having you some other time. It's been wonderful time here. Bye, everyone. See you next time. Take care for now. Bye.
Thank you so much.